So we're about 20 miles west of Yellowstone. And the cool part about this is it looks like a bunch of little baby trees have popped up to replace all the ones that died. So I'm going to just run out here real quick and show you a little bit of evidence to show what kind of fire this is. And we don't have to go all over every bit of it. A couple of key points on some of these trees ought to be sufficient. So that's where I started out from with the first of this video. And I'm going to just pan around and show you a few examples. And then go get some close-ups of these examples. Here you can see that clearly the energy is running on the inside of the tree. Right up to here. And that's why it creates this burn streak, and you can see that the outer wood is unburned, but the inner core wood there is burned. And you can see all the same burn-unburn patterns all over everything, everywhere. This one's kind of cool, how it's all pitted. Let's go check some of these others. Like, I don't have to cherry pick and show you one here and one there. The burn-unburn pattern is everywhere you look, and fire don't do that. Unburn, unburn. These two trees, this one's unburned, right next to this one that's highly burned. Right next to this one that's unburned. This stump right here. So the evidence is all over. If you know what you're looking at, there's not a single place you can look in this fire and not see the evidence. But like that guy said on that last, those firefighters that were sitting at the scene. Yeah, this is bizarre. Check this out. Those firefighters that were sitting at the scene saying this is under investigation, this is a restricted area and you're not supposed to be here. That's how they keep their confidentiality. For one, notice how it's concaved right here, all the way around the whole bottom of the tree. But most of all, notice how highly burned this whole tree is. Right next to the unburned. Here's an unburned spot. This little unburned spot right here, along with all the trees that are sitting around, right next to it, unburned, tells you this is one of those flameless forest fires where it sizzles it, but any flame that comes out gets sucked right back in. So, this one's highly burned, right next to these two that are unburned, but here's another example of the core wood on the inside being black and the outer wood being unburned, which shows you that this is electricity coursing up through the tree from the roots. Oh, here's some more great examples. This black circle, this little black circle, all the branches are only burnt on the inside where the branch was protruding. And here, same thing. And here. Here. And you'll see this on telephone poles around your area. You'll notice the knots of the telephone poles are all black, because that's where it's the densest. Wherever there's a knot in the wood, that's the hardest to light on fire, and it's the hardest to cut through with a saw. And it's because there is more dense fibers compact into that area where there's a knot. And a knot is simply a point where there was a branch about to protrude. And so the electricity follows the fibers of the tree like wires that conduct the electricity, and it always brings it up to one of these points. All the way up the tree, it's the same. Every place where there was a branch, the branch got sizzled down, and it leaves this black circle. All the way up the tree it goes. Wow, these flies are a little bit much. I don't know if they're horse flies or what. So all of the trees that you see laying on the ground out here that are white, unburnt, they all have this same pattern where the branches, or the knots where there once was a branch, have the black burn spot. And this is a classic irony. See how this one's unburnt, except of course for the little black spots that we just discussed. And it's leaning up against this tree. That's the highly burnt tree. So I think what happens is a lot of these actually snap and fall over because the electricity, it snaps like a fuse. In fact, you see how this is kind of whittled down at the bottom? There was one of these plasma fires where a beaver had chewed the bottom of the tree down to a certain diameter, and all those trees had snapped and fallen over, because what was left of the wood that the beaver hadn't chewed worked like a filament in a fuse. And the amount of electricity that came up through that wood was enough to make it snap. Just like a filament in a fuse disconnects when there's too much energy going through it. These trees where the beaver had chewed it down, right at the bottom there was like 5 or 6 of them that he chews down to the point where it's still standing, and at any time he wants he can go just chew the rest of it and flop the tree over. And all of those trees that had been reduced to a certain diameter at the bottom flopped over. And that's what's happening with a lot of these trees. And that's why so many of them are laid over like this. Unburn, burn. And the reason there's such a significant difference, because the electricity grounds up one tree and leaves the one right next to it alone. More irony. More irony. Burn, unburn right next to each other. They're literally touching here and here, because it's a flameless forest fire for the most part. More irony sitting here, just waiting for someone to go, huh? Huh? How does that happen? And so many of them have the roots where they literally just fell right out of the ground. They were trying to jump up out of the ground. They're like, oh, sucks. Wow, look at that one with the pits carved in it right there. So it burnt this whole tree all the way down to pretty much nothing, yet left a little bit of an unburned spot on the outside. These are all the indicators that when people say, how did you notice this? It just seemed to occur to me that fire doesn't work like this. And taking a few guesses, I think I've come to some pretty logical and reasonable conclusions that it's electricity coming up from the ground. Otherwise, oh, and this one's pretty good. See, this one, it's actually hooked right here. That's all one tree right there that I'm grabbing right now. So it's completely burned this branch, left this one untouched, and it's part of the same tree. And as you can see, the electricity came up from the roots and chose the right fork and left the left fork alone. Then you have this unburned one between them, and even the unburned fork that it left alone is sitting on top of another one that's highly burnt with an unburnt spot. Here's another one of those beaver burn trees where it's burned the bottom of it out, concaved on both sides so much that you could probably kick it over. Yeah. Then you have some more of this stuff going on. Yeah. Let's see if I can get the light on that to where you can actually see what I'm talking about. Not sure how well the lighting's doing, but basically looks at the bottom like a beaver chewed it down to a smaller diameter than what the rest of the tree is. And this one looks like it's worth checking out. The groove that goes all the way up, it's like that's where the electricity chewed out a groove that goes all the way up. This one's got another example of how the inner core wood is much more burnt than the outer wood. And let's go find something else. Let's do a wide angle shot and look at how this tree and this tree are totally black, but this one is unburnt and those two are unburnt. Again, except for where the smaller branches were protruding, and then you'll see all the black dots going all the way up. And back there along the mountain, there's a lot of dead wood back there. And it all looks just like what we're seeing here. How this is still a secret really speaks to the human condition, because that's what's scarier to me than the plasma fires, is the fact that I'm still the only one talking about it. This is so obvious that it really speaks to the human condition of our capacity for denial and our inability to be able to perceive what we can't emotionally process. That's why so many are unable to see this, because it requires those emotional calories that James True talks about in order to process what it is you're seeing, so they literally can't see it. And that's what's striking about this scene in particular, is all the places where you see the, not only one log with unburnt spots on that log, but how many unburnt logs are literally lying on the burnt logs. Yeah. But the good news is there's still baby pine trees coming up that probably made it through or have emerged since. Again, it's got the same little beaver chewed shape on the bottom. This one shows a good example of how all these pits are chewed right out of the surface. And this one also gives a good example of how that burn pattern occurs. This one has such like a leopard print of burn-unburn pattern. This one has all the little black dots. On all the tips of the branches that sizzled down far enough that those branches have disappeared. But the black dots where the branches once were tell the tale of what happened here. Even right down to the little ones, not even just the big ones. All these little dots, all these little branches. Same. Nice pit burned out of that one. That's kind of what you're seeing in some of these telephone poles. Much bigger pit burned out of this one right here. More examples of how most of these are tipped over and their roots popped right out the ground. And I think those roots have been slowly deteriorated over time. All of these have the black spot. Because I think it's actually been like chewing away at the roots before it hits them with the full force. There's an ambient level of electricity that's kind of having its way with the roots. Here's some more some more of the same. You can see this one right up top has a pretty good chunk missing out of it. And the difference between this one and this one, even though they're so close. Ooh, he just did the devil horns. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about some of this stuff that James True is talking about, because it's the same spirit that leads him. He said in one of his streams, I'll include the link in the description along with the minute and second, that the gifts of Baal are delivered on April 19th. That happens to be the day I found my implant, and 1 year later, the day I left to Missouri. Little hard for me to deny that there is truth in what he is saying when he says that. Then the question becomes, can you be more moral than the truth? And I'm going to talk a lot about that. Because those dragons that James makes at the campsites, he's got, you know, in one of the videos that I put in the link in the description recently, I said there's 5 or 6 dragons, where he makes these dragon effigies with lights and smoke machines and everything else. He also says that whatever you pay attention to and focus your energy, your attention upon, you are worshiping. In that way, he says you're worshiping him when you watch his stream. Therefore, when he focuses that much attention on building these dragons in his campsites, I can pretty much assure you that it's only a matter of a short time before he explains the meaning and significance of that to him. It's not just a cool decoration to make people go, cool, man. It has meaning. And the divine feminine, that's what's missing in this whole bloody picture, according to the Beatles. You know, you got to save yourself. Ain't nobody gonna do it for you. Well, you may believe in Jesus, and you may believe in Buddha, and you may believe in Krishna, but Christ, you're gonna have to save yourself, and that's all there is to it. Because there's one thing missing in this whole bloody picture, and it's your mother. Your poor bloody mother who bore you with the piss and shit and midwives. And as Joni Mitchell sings, don't interrupt the sorrow. In flames, our prophet witches, be polite. And like I was saying, join us witches. Join this Antichrist. We actually stand for something. On my way out to Missouri, James is taking those slings and arrows right now and allowing anyone and everyone who wants to say, oh, he's the Antichrist. He's trying to tell you that you can define morality. And we all know King James defines morality. You know, the cross-dresser King James. Yeah, that's where we get our morality from. And once the definition of a word has been given, it is no longer up to us to think for ourselves. Being the author of your own authority is very important right now. And those who haven't practiced and exercised it. The currency of most value is trust. Here in the very near future, it will be the only currency of value. Trust is the ability to predict what someone will do in a certain circumstance. If they're a thief, you can trust that if you leave anything of value out on the table and turn your back, they will take it. Trust, appreciation, and respect are just an ability to predict what something will do. They say, you better respect this firearm or that F-15 jet that you're flying and the power that it holds. Trust, respect, and appreciation are synonyms for predictability and knowing what someone will do in a certain circumstance. I'm going to talk about, I went to church this last Sunday, and the words that she used resonated with me. She talked about how she and her mother got baptized when she was 8 years old. One of the ladies who gave a testimony, there was only 2, and one of them really resonated with me. Because she said that she was a Mormon since she was 8 years old, but up until about 3 or 4 years ago, she never really questioned it. 3 or 4 years ago, she had a crisis of faith and really asked herself, what do I believe in? And do I really believe, and why do I believe any of this? And only then did she develop a true testimony. And as I said previously to people like some of my sisters who've walked away, the people of the church had a big smile on their face the day they saw you walk away and decide you were going to go do it for yourself, and that you weren't just going to take someone's word for it. And the only day that they'll have a bigger smile on their face is the day they see you return, because only then will they know that they can trust that you know why you're here, and that one day you're not just going to realize, I don't know if I believe in any of this. And they are going to be able to trust and predict what you will do. Like me, for example, people know that there's a common thread of principles, my underlying priorities that are reflected in my outward standards of behavior, so they can predict what I will do in a certain circumstance, even if it's unprecedented and they've never seen anything like it. They can calculate and predict what it is I will do based on that common thread of principles that are personally relevant, personally meaningful understandings and knowings, not just going along to get along because there's a social reward for saying I believe this and I believe in Santa Claus. And so I'll talk a lot more about that in an upcoming video. For now, let's just check out a couple more of these trees. See the two black ones here in the midst of all the unburnt ones? Man, they got some flies here that are horrendous. They're like just unrelenting, wanting to land on you. I don't know what they're trying to do, lay eggs or what. So as far as James True's information, it must be learned line upon line, precept upon precept. So I would suggest going back to the one titled Dojo Earth and then working your way forward. If that information seems of interest to you. I'm showing you here that you can see all the way down the black dots where the limbs once came out. Here's kind of a cool one where you can see it burnt out the inside here and left remaining only a little. A little of the outside. Anyway, as you can see, I think here on Dojo Earth, graduation day has arrived. Judgment Day has already begun, like the day that the Cathedral of Notre Dame got struck. And Judgment Day is ongoing. And right now we're just prolonging the calm before the storm for a little bit longer to see if we can get a couple more graduates. But after that, it's we're done. We're out of here. And I've been waiting for this moment all my life. Oh long, oh long. All the way up. You can see that one still has a little bit of a branch protruding. The rest of these have been burnt all the way off and just leave. For some reason it don't seem to show up too well in the camera. I can see a black spot, but it just looks like a shadow. That's what's happening in all those. All the way up. You can see a lot of dead trees are still standing. And to finish my thought about those firefighters who said, this is under investigation, this is a restricted area, and you're not supposed to be here. He said that in response to my question, what do you think about this? And they have been instructed to say that. That's how you protect a pedophile or a drug dealer, is to keep them under investigation. So even if another cop catches them in the act, they have to let them go because this is under investigation, and we've had 2 years of investigators putting resources into this investigation, and in order to not interfere with the investigation, you can't say anything. Oh, okay, so because it's under investigation, I can't say anything to anybody, otherwise it might interfere with the investigation. Right, that's it. Okay, so that's what I say to anybody who comes along with questions. Yep, it's under investigation and you can't say anything about it. Or it might interfere with the investigation and you go to jail. All right. Gonna go over here and check out a couple more. You can see this bolt of lightning that coursed its way up through the tree in kind of a spiral motion. I think this is about the end of the video.